College Game Day just went to Cal Berkeley for the first time in the show's history, and it completely broke college football. 5 of the top 11 schools in the country lost, and it really should have been 6 if it wasn't for some questionable calls in that Miami game. But point is, it was spectacular, because just the week prior we were hearing how the top teams in college football were playing a different sport than the rest of the country. And the very thought of giving multiple bids to a conference that's not the SEC or the Big Ten would be complete blasphemy. And it's a problem fairly unique to college football that the logo on the side of the helmet or the conference patch on the front of the jersey means way more than any results on the field. And it's sad to say, but every single year we're seeing those with the most power in college football doing everything in their power to consolidate even more of it. And if things keep continuing down this path, we arrive at a place where college football is just a shell of what it used to be. But there is another option, one that addresses most of the major issues that we see in college football today and would allow it to grow and thrive for years to come. Yet it's an option that will never happen, and here's why. Now, as much as I love college football, it's never been without its issues. The battle for things like compensating players, player safety, or just crowning one true champion every year has been waged on for decades now. But we seem to have arrived at a crossroads where decisions are being made to decide how college football will look for the next 20 or 30 years. And one group has presented a plan that addresses most of the major concerns. It's called the College Student Football League, or CSFL for short, and it would reorganize college football into 2 conferences made up of 12 divisions and 72 teams, most of those being the current P4 teams we have today. There would also be a group of 8 consisting mostly of group of 5 teams. The postseason would consist of a 24-team playoff with automatic bids for each of the 12 divisions, with at-large bids filling in the rest of the field, similar to a wild card in the NFL. And what's really interesting about this model is that it allows for a group of 8 promotion based on success on the field. Relegation, however, would not be included in this current plan. Mostly because these universities have budgets that they need to approve every year, and that would just kind of throw a wrench into the whole system. But it would mean teams like Boise State or Liberty could work their way up into the big leagues and really prove themselves at the highest level. Teams would still be rewarded financially for frequent participation in the postseason, so if your team really is the best and they've earned that right, they will be compensated accordingly. And to me, all of this sounds great, but really the playoff is only the tip of the iceberg that is threatening to sink the ship that is college football. What's been lost over the years is how college football has arrived to where it is today. It's America's second most popular sport, and it's behind only the NFL. And it's a sport that was built on regional interest and rivalries that would culminate in national matchups to decide who's the best. But due to conference realignment and teams chasing more money, games like Bedlam, the Civil War, the Holy War, and many more have been stripped from fans and players. And teams are now forced to travel thousands of miles to face off against conference opponents. I'm sorry, but when you have a conference that's called the Atlantic Coast Conference and you have teams in there competing from the Bay Area, we have some problems. And it's fun as it's been to see these Tallahassee memes, for example. I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to have this kind of distance between teams within a conference, except for the TV executives. And this tweet from John Wilner kind of highlights the issue. Teams in the Big Ten that have had to travel 2 time zones to play a game are 1 in 8 so far on the season. In my opinion, college football is at its best when it has healthy, historically meaningful rivalries across all parts of the country. And the CSFL's 12 division structure would prioritize those regional matchups. And that doesn't mean that teams from other divisions can't play each other across country throughout the year. I mean, there would only be 6 teams per division. But it would just make sure that these classic rivalries that have meant so much to local fan bases continue for years to come. The other major issue that we've been seeing in college football is the rampant tampering and shady deals being done behind closed doors.
The tampering that other schools do with players is utterly ridiculous.
Portal's not the problem. NIL's not the problem. The problem is tampering.
Big schools are going and getting players constantly.
That could be fixed easily too if they would let football people fix it. We don't usually get a vote in that.
I mean, we all know what's happening. Every year there's a team that develops their player into a star only to have a program with way more resources lure him into the transfer portal with promises that they may or may not even keep. Now, whether that's just the player trying to chase a paycheck or the school's making promises that they can't keep is really beside the point. Bottom line is things can't go on like this. You can't have a school like UNLV, who is having its best year in in decades, all of a sudden have its star quarterback leave due to disputes about NIL compensation, or after a few games getting a more lucrative offer somewhere else. Although it looks like UNLV is going to be just fine, it does seem like that's caused a domino effect throughout all of college football, and it's left a really ugly mark on the sport that needs to get addressed ASAP. And the CSFL proposal actually has a plan for that as well. They want this restructuring to include a players association in order to negotiate pay and hopefully bringing more uniformity and organization to NIL, and in the future direct pay to athletes from the universities. And all of these discussions can be happening in the off season so that when the season kicks off, we can just focus on football. Now on top of that, they talk about introducing a transfer limit of 2 per player, which I think could be a really good idea. I think players should definitely have the freedom to decide where they're going to play throughout their career, while at the same time combating the growing trend of players jumping from school to school every single year. I mean, I know there's always exceptions to the rules where players can thrive on their 3rd or 4th school, but I think for the majority of cases, a limit of 2 would be appropriate. Now, in my opinion, this plan is as close to perfect as you can get for the future of college football. Regional conferences, 24-team playoff system, more organization for student compensation and reduced tampering, and smaller teams that earn the right have the opportunity to compete at the highest level. And here's why it's never going to happen.
I don't want to dumb down the Southeastern Conference to be part of some super league with 70 teams. They want to be us, and that's on them to figure it out, not on me to bring myself back to earth.
It's no secret that the Big Ten and the SEC run college football, and what incentive do they have to level the playing field across the country? By all measures, they get whatever they want with this current format, and they're most likely about to get even more. The SEC and the Big Ten have been meeting together to discuss the future of the college football playoff system, specifically to get rid of the selection committee in order to mitigate subjectiveness and rely more heavily on strength of schedule, which at first glance seems great, but then you hear that they want to set up a scheduling partnership, which would just further build up that wall dividing them from the rest of college football. And then on top of that, you hear that both conferences want 4 automatic bids to the playoff every single year. And that's when you realize that all of this is just to consolidate and monopolize any sliver of power and money that they weren't already in control of in the first place. And it just makes you think, when is enough enough? The Big Ten and the SEC always get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the playoff due to the public perception that these 2 leagues from top to bottom are just on a whole nother level than anyone else. And I'll be honest, the top 2-ish teams in both the SEC and the Big Ten are probably on another level than most of college football. But I'm not convinced that the rest of the conference is light years ahead of the ACC or the Big 12. But the media bias just continues this toxic thinking that any team outside of those 2 conferences are inferior and barely even deserve a seat at the table. And it's always been hard for me to wrap my head around, because take college basketball, for example. You don't hear people complaining that a St. Peter's team that was 19-11 in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference gets an automatic bid to March Madness. Instead, they're one of the most celebrated stories in sports that year. But the idea that the top team in the Big 12 gets an automatic bid to the playoff is stupid, because the SEC deserves 4. I'm sorry, but this Brandon Walker tweet really pissed me off. But aside from all the pushback that this plan is going to get from the Big Ten and the SEC, the CSFL would have to overcome TV contracts, bowl affiliations, and countless other legal obstacles to make this a reality. And I hate to say it's never going to happen, but I hope one day in the future, those in charge will consider the consequences of pushing this beautiful sport to a place where it can never come back from. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. Also, real quick before I end this video, I just want to say thank you guys so much to everyone that's subscribed or left a comment or a like on any of the videos the past few months. The growth has been insane for the channel, and I'm so grateful for all of you guys for supporting it along the way. Also, shout out to SeatGeek. We have our first channel sponsor, which is really exciting. If you guys are looking for any tickets for the upcoming games, just use my code WHERE for $20 off your first purchase. The link will be in the description below. Again, thank you to SeatGeek for being the channel's first sponsor. And thank you to all of you for watching the videos, subscribing. It means a lot. So see you guys next time.